Part 37, when he rescued Bai Yunfei, meeting with my second brother's commander Zan Luzhao. Xuan Huaifeng returned to the bed, and when he saw the pillow seat, he had no desire to lie down. After walking 2 steps in the room, I always felt that I couldn't put it down, so I found a long gown and draped it over my shoulders, and walked towards Bai Xuelan's room under the moonlight. He often went to Bai Xuelan's room recently, and he was not as shy as he used to be. He raised his hand and knocked on the door twice, and found that the door was unlocked. So he naturally pushed the door and went in. After entering the door, I glanced inside, and my face couldn't help but turn a little red. Bai Xuelan was only wearing a pair of black long silk trousers. And his top was completely taken off, revealing his sturdy muscles. The secret medicine from the Qing Palace had already been delivered, and Bai Xuelan was sitting beside the bed, holding the plaster in the Jade room with his fingernails, turning his arms over and smearing it on his back with difficulty. As soon as Xuan Huaifeng came in, Bai Xuelan turned his head and saw that it was him. He asked interestingly, "It's rare that you came to me in the middle of the night. Can't you sleep?" Xuan Huaifeng asked. "What's wrong with your back?" Bai Xuelan smiled bitterly. "How can it be? It's not worth mentioning that it is clumsy." Xuan Huaifeng was 8 or 9 steps away. Sensitive animals smell the scent of hunters, and feel a little dangerous. But when he came here, he was worried that Bai Xuelan had suffered an injury he didn't know about. But now he has confirmed that it would be too ruthless to turn around and leave. After thinking for a while, he walked to Bai Xuelan and only looked at his back seriously. A few pieces of skin were probably rubbed against by something hard, and a few dry bloodshots could be seen vaguely. Bai Xuelan had been in the mansion for a while, and he didn't know where he got these injuries on his back. Xuan Huaifeng was puzzled, and just as he was about to ask, his eyes swept across the thick shoulders, and beyond the broken skin. There were a few very unbearable nail scratches, and his temples jumped suddenly. His back was slightly warm with shame, thinking that standing like this would make it easier to reveal the truth. He pretended to be calm and said, "It's inconvenient for you, let me do it." Picking a little ointment on his fingertips, he dared to put a gentle light on Bai Xuelan's back and said, "My hand is neither light nor heavy. If it hurts, you can tell me." Bai Xuelan felt that the fingertips caressed his back, both the coldness of the ointment and the body temperature of Xuan Huaifeng. "It is cold and hot, only the fairy wind in the sky can compare. What's more, Xuan Huaifeng is such a rare initiative and considerate." After sitting and enjoying it for a while, I felt a little uneasy again. I was worried that the sitting posture was not good. Xuan Huaifeng had to slowly rub the medicine with his neck down. After a long time, his neck would not be sore. Bai Xuelan said, "Let me lie down, sit down, see clearly, and don't get tired of your feet." He got on the bed and lay down. Xuan Huaifeng had to listen to him, sat down beside the bed, lowered his head and looked after him. No matter what, Bai Xuelan put his hands on the pillow, put his fingers together, put half of his face on it, twisted his neck, turned his face sideways, and looked at Xuan Huaifeng carefully. Xuan Huaifeng came here temporarily, wearing a set of white cotton pajamas, with a black satin gown draped over his shoulders, lining his snow-white neck. But the sleeves of the pajamas are short, and every time he reaches his hand to get medicine and apply medicine, a snow-white arm sticks out from under the long gown, very attractive black and white. Bai Xuelan watched his heartbeat for a while. His mouth was dry. He wanted to grab the jade lotus-like arm and take a few bites on it, but he was worried that he would lose the wonderful enjoyment on his back at the moment, so he had to endure it. When Xuan Huaifeng finished applying the medicine and said that he was going back, Bai Xuelan hurriedly got off the bed and said, "Everyone is here, so don't rush to leave." just in time to ask someone to bring something to eat to cushion the stomach. Xuan Huaifeng asked, "What else do you want to eat at this time?" Bai Xuelan said with a smile, "I haven't eaten much for dinner, so I'm already hungry. Even if you don't eat, you should accompany me." Xuan Huaifeng thought about it. Sure enough, Bai Xuelan didn't eat much for dinner. Speaking of this, it was also his own fault. He glanced at him and said in a low voice, "Put on your clothes and let's talk about it." He turned his eyes lightly to the side. Seeing that he was shy about his exposed upper body, Bai Xuelan felt even more ticklish and unbearable. He just wanted to find a way to coax him to stay. After a while, the servant knocked on the door and came in, opened the big red lacquer room, and put dishes on the table, as well as a celadon teapot and 2 cups. The two sat around the table for supper. Bai Xuelan was holding the pot to help him pour it, but Xuan Huaifeng hurriedly stopped it with his hand and said, "I can't sleep after drinking tea at night, so I'd better drink some plain water." Bai Xuelan smiled and gave him a look. "I'm the kind. Are you someone who drinks tea that can't sleep in the middle of the night?" "This is chrysanthemum rock sugar water." He poured a cup for Xuan Huaifeng. Xuan Huaifeng picked it up and tasted it, and it was clear and light, which was very suitable for his appetite. Watching Bai Xuelan eat with big mouthfuls, he is very bold as a man from the northeast. He can't help but have a little appetite. Looking at the table, several dishes are full of hot meat such as braised beef, sauce and shrimp. In addition, there is a steamed dish. The red and white osmanthus cake looks quite fragrant and soft. Even if it was a snack, he didn't use chopsticks either. He stretched out his 2 fingertips, picked up a piece gently and skillfully, and put it on his lips and bit slowly. At that time, the color was really beautiful. The tender white fingertips are holding the red and white sweet-scented osmanthus cake. The lips are elegant pink, the teeth are white, and the tongue that occasionally sticks out because the cake powder touches the corner of the mouth is another innocent and attractive red, coupled with a very enjoyable blush on his face. He has reached the peak, and there are no words to describe it. Bai Xuelan's eyes froze when he saw that. His soul was rippling. But he couldn't just drop his chopsticks and stare at the feast for the eyes. That would definitely embarrass Xuan Huaifeng, and he might stop eating. In order to appreciate a moment more, he peeped with satisfaction, pretended not to care, ate the hot meat on the table slowly, and chatted with Xuan Huaifeng. Seeing that Xuan Huaifeng's glass was empty, he helped him pour chrysanthemum rock candy water. Xuan Huaifeng was fooled, relaxed, and pinched the sweet-scented osmanthus cake in the plate while listening to Bai Xuelan talking about the anecdotes from all over the world. When I saw it later, I was surprised and said, "Oh, why did I finish the whole plate?" Bai Xuelan said, "So you love this, so ask the servant to bring another plate over." Xuan Huaifeng said, "No. I was fascinated by what you said, so I ate it all unknowingly. You should be eating like this." Bai Xuelan said, "You're a pampered son, you are so particular about it." Xuan Huaifeng said, "If you have a healthier eating habit, is it called being pampered? It's getting late, so I should go back to my room." Bai Xuelan walked to the door, wrapped his arms around from behind, grabbed both of his hands, and whispered, "It's so late, why do you have to walk around? Be careful of falling into the water when crossing the bridge." Although Xuan Huaifeng was thrilled by his actions, he seemed to have expected it, and reluctantly said calmly, "Don't be ridiculous, please let go." Bai Xuelan smiled softly, bit his ear, and said, "Sleep here tonight." Xuan Huaifeng's face turned red, he shook his head, and silently went to break Bai Xuelan and grabbed his hand. Bai Xuelan suddenly understood that this time, he was more embarrassed than angry, and instead seemed very affectionate. So he was no longer polite, hugged Xuan Huaifeng, turned it over and carried it on his shoulders, and strode to the bed. Xuan Huaifeng was in a hurry, so he beat it with his fist, shouting, "What are you doing? Put it down, you put it down." Bai Xuelan kept walking. His mouth screamed, "Take it easy, oops, it hurts." Xuan Huaifeng looked at him, and when he was in a hurry, his fist smashed his back. There was the injury. No wonder he screamed in pain, so he had to shrink his hands. Before he turned his head around, he had already been put on the bed. His back was pressed against the soft sheets, and his nerves instantly tightened. Bai Xuelan's long fingers pinched his chin, first tentatively kissed him, and then he became less gentleman. His tongue pried open his teeth, and thrust it into it violently to stir and mess around. Xuan Huaifeng was held tightly on the bed by him. The kiss was messy, and he was embarrassed to scratch his back with his fingernails. Really? How do you still know the words, sorry, at this time? The air in his lungs was reduced, his chest was aching, his brain was dizzy, and even his hands were weak. He barely pulled Bai Xuelan's shoulders and leaned his neck back as much as possible. But Bai Xuelan was tall, and like that the posture, in any case, cannot be avoided. The lips and tongues are very presumptuous, and they become intimate. Bai Xuelan finally let go. Xuan Huaifeng immediately curled up, and the whole ball shrank. Bai Xuelan was angry and funny, and said jokingly, "Are you pretending to be a cold kitten like this? I want to love you even more." Xuan Huaifeng said, "Don't make trouble, I'm not feeling well." Bai Xuelan said, "Don't coax me. When are you really uncomfortable at this time?" Xuan Huaifeng frowned and shook his head, "It's really not. I'm feeling better." Bai Xuelan saw that he was frowning, and his face seemed really bad. So he was slightly taken aback, and hurriedly asked, "Where is the discomfort?" "It hurts in my stomach." Xuan Huaifeng blocked him with his hand and gave him a reproachful look. "Your habit of always carrying people on your shoulders is really bad." Bai Xuelan was also annoyed when he saw him covering his stomach. He forgot his feelings for a while, and didn't care about what he had just eaten. 80% of his shoulders were on his stomach. He smiled bitterly and said, "I sincerely apologize to you." Xuan Huaifeng was a little embarrassed and refused to stick with him. Bai Xuelan held it down and looked at him, showing his white teeth, and smiled slightly. "I don't like you and me twisting and twisting. When you twist, I can't help it." He said this, although it is a threat. 5 points are the truth. Xuan Huaifeng has been with him for a long time, and he knows his temper. The more stubborn it is, the harder it will be, so he has to put his back against his heart and breathe slowly. Bai Xuelan finally hugged him comfortably. But it didn't take long, and after a while, he put his hand on the hem of his pajamas. Xuan Huaifeng asked vigilantly, "What are you doing?" Bai Xuelan said, "Need it for you." Xuan Huaifeng said, "No need." Bai Xuelan showed a dissatisfied expression. "I'll be Lu Shawi. Do you still want to reject people like this?" He grabbed his earlobe and took a bite angrily. After biting, the tongue goes around the biting place again, sweeping and licking in circles like a snake. Xuan Huaifeng was rendered breathless by him for a while, and said with a trembling voice, "Don't make trouble, my stomach is suffering." Bai Xuelan took the opportunity to say, "Then let me rub it for you." Seeing Xuan Huaifeng's silence, slid his hand under the pajamas, slipped through the soft skin, and dropped his palm to the position of his stomach. He didn't dare to be too messy, worried about making Xuan Huaifeng sick, and gently stroked back and forth like a sleeping cat. Xuan Huaifeng felt the warmth in his palm, and it was very comfortable when it was pressed against the skin. At first, he was worried that he was going to make further progress. Later, seeing that he was doing nothing else, he gradually calmed down, turned his head back, and leaned on Bai Xuelan's shoulder to rest. Bai Xuelan said in a low voice, "It's all mine, isn't it? You say you shouldn't eat so late." Xuan Huaifeng said, "It's not necessarily the plate of sweet-scented osmanthus cake. After thinking about it, it might be the shrimp for dinner. And crabs, that stuff is very spicy. I was greedy for a while, and I ate a lot. Crabs are easy to accumulate in the stomach." Bai Xuelan said, "That's my fault too." Xuan Huaifeng said oddly, "I myself. What's wrong with you? I love to eat." Bai Xuelan said, "You are my Bai Xuelan's person. If there is anything wrong with you, it's all my fault." Xuan Huaifeng didn't know what to think when he heard this. Yes, he didn't speak for a while. At the end, he said lightly, "You are so arrogant." He stopped talking to Bai Xuelan, closed his eyes, and rested on his own. With Bai Xuelan taking care of his carefully, the stomach pain gradually subsided after a while, and the palm of his hand was still warm on it, which was very comfortable. The evening wind was blowing slowly outside the window. His back was leaning against Bai Xuelan's body, and Bai Xuelan was holding his arms lightly, warm and comfortable. I don't know how long it took before I heard Bai Xuelan whispering in his ear, "Are you asleep? Is your stomach pain better?" Xuan Huaifeng was already drowsy, and his mind was mushy, and he moved his lips slightly and murmured, "Just hold me." He moved slightly, found a more comfortable position, and fell asleep. The next day, Xuan Huaifeng realized that he had spent the night in Bai Xuelan's arms, shocked and ashamed. Seeing his thin skin, Bai Xuelan didn't tell him the nonsense when he slept ignorantly last night, only smiled and said, "I'm sorry. I'm sick too. I've spent a hard night for you. But I don't dare to let you down. I'm afraid I'll wake you up, but I don't dare to close my eyes. I'm afraid that I accidentally let go and drop you when I fall asleep." Xuan Huaifeng was even more embarrassed, remembering that he had an appointment with Xie Chaifu today. He sullenly rushed to change his clothes. Outside the gate, Bai Xuelan had asked people to prepare 3 cars. Song Ren was wearing a military uniform, with a room gun hanging from his waist, and a long gun on his back. He was waiting majestically with 7 or 8 guards. When Xuan Huaifeng saw it, he couldn't help frowning, and said, "That's too ostentatious." Song Ren laughed and said loudly, "You are the adjutant of the chief of customs. What kind of flair is this? Let me tell you, our Commander Pai is really great in Shandong. There are not only cars, but also horse teams when we go out." Anyway, the commander said, "Now the outside is chaotic, and there will be less than 10 guards and 3 cars in the future. You are not allowed to go out." Now the chaos outside, this Xuan Huaifeng knew. What Bai Xuelan said was not without reason. After thinking about it, Xuan Huaifeng stopped caring about it, got into the middle car, and told the driver an address. Immediately, 2 cars escorted them one after the other and drove on the main road quite conspicuously. Xie Chaifu received a notice from Pai Mansion last night that Adjutant Zan would be here today. So he specially asked his colleagues to help him go to school to take a day off and prepare to wait for Xuan Huaifeng to come. Hearing the sound of the car horn outside the door, as soon as he came out, he was greeted by the murderous guards on the 3 cars, even more so than when he saw Xuan Huaifeng last time, and he couldn't help but jump. Xuan Huaifeng had to explain a few words to him, and then mentioned the matter of changing the house. Xie Chaifu waved his hand and said, I don't dare. Borrowing a lot of money is enough to trouble you, so why do we need you to help us build a house? Xuan Huaifeng said, I made this trip for you, you don't want it. Be polite with me. He persuaded Xie Chaifu again and again, and told him to take Xiao Ronger into the car and go see the house Bai Xuelan mentioned. Outside the door of the small yard, I walked in and saw that all the daily furniture was prepared. the glass windows were clean, and the table and floor were spotless. Even Xuan Huaifeng was secretly surprised. Didn't he say yesterday that it was left empty and no one lived there? Where is it so clean and cheerful? After thinking about it for a while, I knew that Bai Xuelan had arranged it at night. Can't help but suffer from his favor. When I asked Xie Chaifu how it was, Xie Chaifu still had the slightest opinion. He just kept ashamed and said, "Our father and daughter really can't afford it." Xuan Huaifeng said, "This is similar to the place you live now, it's a little cleaner in comparison. That's all. But the word clean is very important, not only for you, but also for Xiaoranger. Such a small girl is not as good as an adult. Living in such a place, there are many bacteria. And people are easy to get sick." When Xie Chaifu reached the threshold of his heart, being a father naturally felt sorry for his daughter. Seeing Xiaoranger looking around in the small yard, looking very happy, so he no longer objected, and instead said that he wanted to invite Xuan Huaifeng to eat and thank him. Knowing that he was shy, Xuan Huaifeng said with a smile, "I have to harass me for this thank you meal, but we were colleagues, don't we know when the teachers' salaries will be paid? Now is not the time, wait for you. I've got my salary, I'm here with you. And you should have 1 or 2 good dishes for me to try." He wanted to manage the house well, so he stayed at his sister's Nian house and turned to look at Xiaoranger, thin and pale, with little blood on her little face, obviously not enough nutrition, and remembered that she lost her mother. Poor heart, thinking that this child often endures hardships. The fun of a child is nothing more than having a toy or eating something delicious. With this opportunity today, it is time to make her happy. He didn't mention going to see his sister, and said to Xie Chaifu, "I've been working on the house all morning, and I'm hungry. I'll be the host today. Would you and Xiaoranger give you honor? Please get in the car." The driver asked where to go. Xuan Huaifeng pondered that they might be able to go to ordinary places, but only places with high consumption are difficult to enter. So it is better to take them to try. But Western food has many rules and tastes ordinary. It is better to choose a high-end Chinese-style restaurant. Xuan Huaifeng said to the driver, "Where are you going to eat Beijing food? You want high-quality and delicious food. You can take us there." After exiting the car door, when he looked up, Xuan Huaifeng knew that he had arrived at the Jinghua building. This restaurant is very famous. It is said that the chefs are all from the palace. In the past, they were imperial chefs, specializing in cooking for Lafayette. They have a great reputation and good taste. The rich love them. The price tag is naturally staggeringly expensive. There are probably more foreigners going to the restaurant recently, and among the few neatly dressed people standing at the door, one of them is an Indian with a big and thick bundle on his head. Xiaoranger stared at him intently. Xie Chaifu looked at the pomp and timid, and said in a low voice, "Mr. Zhan, let's choose another one." Since Xuan Huaifeng became an adjutant, he didn't go out very much, and most of the food he went out to eat was Western food. He didn't come here once. It was very interesting to look at it, although I knew it was expensive. But one was not short of money, and the other was to see Xiaoranger's expression, very curious about this place. Her little face was full of interest, and there was a hint of cuteness of children's color. He refused to choose another one, saying, "Other houses may not be better than this one, just this one." The leader walked in. Seeing their 3 cars approaching and surrounded by many guards, the servants did not dare to neglect, and hurriedly led them to a large room upstairs. Song Ren was still too noisy, so he wanted to find another quiet one. The servant, who ran the hall, smiled and said, "Master, you can see that the business in the building is the most prosperous during dinner time. Fortunately, you came here by coincidence. This room is still reserved and temporarily withdrawn. Otherwise, there would never be a room. I can't even find a seat in the hall downstairs. Song Ren called a guard to walk up and down, and sure enough, the business was good, and the place was full, so he had to give up. Fortunately, the room here is quite large. Xuan Huaifeng opened 2 tables in the room. One was small, and he and Xie Chaifu's father and daughter sat down. The other was large, and he asked Song Ren to sit down with a few guards to eat. When the menu was brought up, Xuan Huaifeng glanced at it, most of which were dishes that were hard to see outside. He wanted Xie Chaifu's father and daughter to try them, so he ordered 5 or 6 of the expensive ones. Xie Kai resisted again and again, saying, "There are only 3 people, so we can't finish it all. How can we as guests feel at ease if you do this as a host?" Xuan Huaifeng had to cross out one of the 6 dishes. Although the price of this Jinghua building is high, it is really good. After ordering the dishes, the hall first brought 2 plates of cold dishes and invited them to eat while waiting. After a while, the hot dishes were served. One taste, the taste is really good. The roast duck skin is fragrant but not greasy. Xiao Ronger was a little restrained at first, but then she became more courageous and ate very well. Xuan Huaifeng took a bite while chatting with Xie Chaifu about the news in the old school. While they were chatting, the noisy voice next door suddenly became louder. And there was a burst of coaxing, as well as the men chatting and laughing unscrupulously. The 2 stopped involuntarily and looked to the right together. The place where you eat Chinese food is different from the place where you eat Western food. Song Ren came over and asked, "Adjutant Zan, why don't I go and tell them to be quiet?" Xuan Huaifeng shook his head and said, "Forget it, why bother with others? Maybe it will stop after a while." Sure enough, after a while, yes. It was quiet in the room next door. Xuan Huaifeng smiled and chatted with Xie Chaifu again. Unexpectedly, after saying a sentence or 2, I heard the next door ringing again, not only noisy, but a very nice tune. He sang, "Qishi girls grew up in the village of Raimi, and it's rare to have happy things and often frown." Xuan Huaifeng was taken aback. Isn't this the lyrics in Qishi? The voice was very familiar, it seemed to be Bai Yunfei's tone. Listen carefully. Yes, it was Bai Yunfei's voice. Xuan Huaifeng knew that Bai Yunfei was mostly accompanying the dinner party. And it was a coincidence that he happened to bump into the next door where he was eating. Thinking of the last time Bai Yunfei was sent away, I still felt a little guilty. I thought about whether I should take this opportunity to talk to Bai Yunfei after the dinner. Just thinking about it, I suddenly heard a sound from the next door. Someone smashed something on the ground, causing Xiao Ronger, who was eating, to shrink her chopsticks. The song Bai Yunfei sang also stopped immediately. A rough male voice scolded, "Your family is rich. What the hell are you singing?" Xuan Huaifeng was secretly surprised. Why does this voice sound vaguely impressive? I just can't remember who it was. The man next door, probably someone, whispered the name of the play to him next to him, and after a while, he snorted again, "Your mother? You are Qishi. Isn't this commander the husband who has spent 8 lifetimes? This lord, when I first arrived here, I asked you to come and accompany me with small drinks. So you were deliberately looking for bad luck for this lord, didn't you?" I heard Bai Yunfei hold back his anger and say, "It's because I'm not thoughtful, Commander, you have a lot. Don't take offense. Everyone." He also echoed a few sentences, and some persuaded the commander to order another piece of music. The commander smiled and said, "Those gentle songs are hard to understand. This commander likes to listen to vulgar ones." "Well, you can sing. I will loosen this button. The girls in the brothel are singing lewd songs." As soon as he said it, there was a burst of laughter around him as if he was watching a good show, and occasionally there was a woman's coquettish voice. The commander is good or bad? You want him to be a man with loose buttons. What about our sisters? Bai Yunfei wondered. He was still frightened, and his voice trembled slightly. Commander, don't take it offense. I am opera singers, and only these few books are set, and other songs, I can't sing. Then learn it. Xiao Yinling, aren't you the best at singing the tunes in the building? Come on. You teach this guy a good one. Bai Yunfei said, it's too late to learn now, as a child is stupid. I have an appointment with someone else. Before he could finish speaking, he heard a slap on the flesh and a pop. Xuan Huaifeng was pricking up his ears to listen to the movement, and when he heard the slap, his heart jumped. The commander said viciously, your mother. Shame on your face. Are you impatient to greet me? Did you make an appointment after dinner? Who did you make an appointment with? Speak. This commander pinches his yoke. After sinking down, he gestured towards Xie Chaifu, asking him and Xiao Ronger to stay where they were, stand up by themselves, and led Song Ren and a few guards out, to the door of the room next door, and pushed the door directly in. There was a room full of people, men and women. Some men wore military uniforms, some wore short jackets, and they all had a tough look that ordinary people would not dare to provoke. The women seemed to be prostitutes, all dressed in gorgeous clothes, applying grease and powder. There are 4 or 5 people surrounded by a man with a bald head and dangling eyes. Bai Yunfei stood at the table, his face down, stiff like a wooden man. The smell of smoke, fat powder, wine, and hot meat and vegetables mixed together, making people frown. The commander also brought guards. 7 or 8 people stood around. Suddenly, someone pushed the door and came in. He thought it was the commander's friend. Getting nervous, he raised his spears on the ground and pointed them all at the door. He shouted and asked, who? Report your name. Song Ren took the box gun, stood beside Xuan Huaifeng, and shouted coldly, don't mess around. We are from the General Administration of Customs. The huge room suddenly became quiet. After a while, the bald commander sneered, it's the General Administration of Customs again? Shit. This commander is eating and drinking here, and doing your shit with the General Administration of Customs. Fuck your mother. Song Ren saw him stand up, and the box gun was lifted up and, fearing that there would be a shootout, Xuan Huaifeng raised his hand to suppress the muzzle. Don't be reckless. We are all acquaintances here. He turned his head and said to the commander, Uncle Zan, do you still recognize me? Long time no see, you already have the commander. No wonder he felt the voice familiar when he was next door just now, and when he met. He remembered that this person was a soldier from his father's year, whose surname was Zan. Now most of the time, after his father died, he took over the army himself and was promoted from division commander to commander. Commander Zan was stunned when he heard this, and looked up and down at Xuan Huaifeng before recognizing. Young master, so it's you. I didn't expect Commander Zan to be dead, and you started shaking. Ha, drink. The cross foreign ink is different. It has been mixed with the General Administration of Customs. What kind of official are you now? Xuan Huaifeng said modestly, I don't have the ability to be a high-ranking official. I'm an adjutant under the Chief of Customs, just running errands for him. Commander Zan sneered, that's also very promising. He gestured to the guards, put down the gun, you are blinded by your dog's eyes, and even the young master of Commander Zan doesn't recognize it? Put the gun down. Hang the box gun back. But he still stood by Xuan Huaifeng's side and never left. The frightened girls breathed a sigh of relief, and the atmosphere became more lively. Commander Zan stopped standing, sat back in his seat, and asked Xuan Huaifeng, young master, your General Administration of Customs is very well informed. I just arrived, and you came to me. Is there anything wrong? Xuan Huaifeng looked at Bai Yunfei, but still didn't dare to move on the spot. He smiled and said, I didn't know, I'm not here for official business. It's just this boss Pai, who made an appointment with me to meet after dinner. I have already finished my meal, and I haven't seen him yet. I heard that he is accompanying guests here in Jinghua building. I was afraid that he would delay the time, so I came to ask. If Uncle Zan is not surprised, I want to take him to the appointment first. What's the matter? Commander Zan didn't even look at Bai Yunfei. He waved his hand generously. This guy can't even sing a song, so it's not useful. You just take it away. Xuan Huaifeng didn't expect him to be so good. After discussing it, he hurriedly said, Thank you very much for that. He waved to Bai Yunfei, and was about to take him out, when a person on the table suddenly stood up, walked up to him, and called out, Second brother. Xuan Huaifeng was taken aback for a moment. After a closer look, it was actually his half-brother Xuan Huaifeng, who asked in surprise, Third brother, what is it about you? Is the second mother here too? She took the money to open a silk shop. And a fire broke out, and even the old house was sold. He pointed to the seat. I don't study anymore, I'm eating with Commander Zan. Second brother, you see, you are an adjutant. And I am also an adjutant, and it's the same position. Xuan Huaifeng couldn't help but wonder why he had just said the commander had become the commander again. Looking along the third brother's finger, he realized that he was not referring to a bald head, but a man in an officer's uniform sitting next to the bald head. A belt was tied around his waist. People are also young and strong. It's just that there is a hint of rude arrogance in the heroic spirit, and the eyes are very sharp. Seeing him looking at the man, Xuan Huaifeng asked, This Commander Zan, second brother, remember? He is the nephew of Commander Zan. He used to be his father's bodyguard for a while, and he is very capable. When my father was the commander, there were many guards around him, and people were always changing. Xuan Huaifeng really couldn't remember these many people. However, Zan Luzhao has been paying attention to him. Seeing him nodding to himself, he also nods at him. The corners of his lips are raised, and he stares at him with a half-smile. Those eyes stared at him unabashedly, which made Xuan Huaifeng feel uncomfortable. He turned his head and asked his younger brother, Are you really not studying? If it's because Niang has no money, I have a salary here. Although it's not much, you can still study. Xuan Huaifeng said, The thing that bothers me the most is to be an adjutant. Because they are not the same mother. Their brotherhood has never been close. Since Xuan Huaifeng decided this way, Xuan Huaifeng had no choice but to follow suit. He asked Song Ren for a blank piece of paper, took out a pen, wrote down his address, handed it to Xuan Huaifeng, and said, Come here to find me if you have something to do. Not wanting to stay for a long time, he said hello to Commander Zan and said goodbye. He came out with Bai Yunfei. Xuan Huaifeng first asked Bai Yunfei to wait for him in the car, and then returned to the room by himself. It just so happened that Xie Chaifu and Xiao Ronger were already full, and there were still some dishes left on the table. Xuan Huaifeng settled the account, and then called the servant to wrap the rest of the vegetables in a few bags, and handed them over to Xie Chaifu, and said to him, I still have something to do, so I won't accompany you. I'll call a car for you. The rickshaw is coming, you and Xiao Ronger go back first. The house has been cleaned up, you can stay here anytime. Instruct one of the guards to call a small rickshaw. Saying goodbye to Xie Chaifu, picking up Xiao Ronger again, kissing her, and then coming downstairs. When I got to the car, I saw Bai Yunfei sitting inside with his head down. Xuan Huaifeng looked at the red finger marks on his cheeks, and it was estimated that he had been beaten by Commander Zan. The dignified man was so sloppy, he didn't know how to comfort him. And sighed, such a rude guest, you will be in the future, avoid them as much as possible. Those who lead soldiers have bad tempers. Bai Yunfei said with a wry smile, I was invited by a regular customer, and I didn't know how to entertain such a soldier. I'm not a fool, either. If I had known it was someone with soldiers and guns like this, I would have put it off. Xuan Huaifeng asked, which regular customer? He won't say hello like this. But you will be beaten. Bai Yunfei hesitated before saying anything. Finally, he glanced at him and shook his head, my guest, you don't even know me. Besides, he probably didn't mean it. After a pause, he said in a low voice, thank you for helping me out. Hearing his thanks, Xuan Huaifeng couldn't help feeling desolate for him. He sighed and said, I should have gone earlier. If I do not hesitate, you will not be beaten. Where are you going now? I'll take you home.